Well, we live in towns and villages along the Buckets Way, and that's the New South Wales designated tourist drive too for New South Wales. And this area has been under attack for a very long time from coal mines and gravel quarries, and those are already existing. However, there are other proposed quarries in this area, and also land clearance, care of government approvals for various reasons, from anything from wanting to become a cattle baron in natural bushland, and local land services approved that to happen. Or you can have an ecotourism accommodation place being impacted by that land clearance. And in the same area, you can have coal mines and rock quarries. And obviously the natural environment loses. And obviously then the people living in this area that chose to live in this bushland as the reason for coming here is watching as government approvals are authorising the destruction of many of our mountainous bushland areas, that the companies get away with writing in their documentation that we are saplings, cleared grassy hill, and that they're trying to make everyone believe that when the natural grassland was the originator, when in actual fact it's the natural bushland that we all live in, and it's a natural bushland that is being destroyed by government approvals. ICAG started in 2005 when we had a proposed magnetite mine over a 25 square kilometre area that was going to impact properties in Limeburners Creek, Alworth and Burrell, and along the Buckets Way in a north, south, east, west. Sadly and interestingly at the same time, the family that wants to put in the proposed quarry is actually in the same area that this proposed magnetite mine wanted to go in back proceeding of workings from 2005 to 2009, when they then moved out under exploration. And fortunately, there was no company that came in to take up the 3 months of their leftover exploration. The family that wants to put in the proposed quarry is actually wanting to put it in on their properties, and how much of this valley in the Deep Creek Valley area they own is unknown. Originally, they put in a subdivision area of around 8 or 9 properties, and it's some of those properties that they retained that they now want to put the open cut quarry gravel rock mine on if they're approved. They're going for a state significant development, so that means that they've got on their documentation they're wanting to mine out over 500,000 tonnes per annum, and so that puts it directly with the New South Wales Planning DPIE department. ICAG, we incorporated in 2010, December, when the planning department notified us all that were objectors to Duralie Coal that they were going to give full rescinding rights to Gloucester Coal, Duralie Coal, and one of those conditions of consent was the no river discharge condition of consent. Now, this put us into a new pot of boiling water, in the fact that the DPIE, the planning department, should actually be upholding the conditions of consent that are put against, awarded against a company. And those conditions are there as some sort of guideline. And when you have the planning department that was going to remove almost 100 conditions of consent against Duralie Coal, which had been fought vigorously and hard from individuals and community groups back then, including Johnson's Creek Conservation Committee, who went through almost 2 years of commission of inquiry before the coal mine had even turned the first sod of grass to get the conditions set down. So it put us in a new boat where the New South Wales Planning Department wasn't interested in upholding those conditions, that they were actually interested in aiding and abetting a coal mine to have all the conditions rescinded and to be able to then follow through with 3 separate applications with the DPIE to put a pipe directly into Mammy Johnson's River, Karuah River, out to Port Stephens, and belching all their dirty, contaminated water 24/7. In court, we stopped them putting a pipe into the river, but the judge gave them all the creeks. We did have some wins. We did have other wins with offset in perpetuity, and that was a landmark case in the fact that mining companies usually move their offset areas and then mine that out, pick another offset area and then mine that out. In the court case, it put down that they had to keep these areas in offset in perpetuity. And it gave, like all community groups that go to the Land and Environment Court or court system, it gives then other people and community groups a basis and a platform to build on their own personal court case. And so ICAG, we went to court 2011 January to February 2012. We came out the other side of that. People had given their reports to court of the impacts, the health impacts, the noise, the dust, the impacts to their own animals and the domestic animals, horses, cows, chickens, were all suffering impacts. Now, those reports assisted then properties to be purchased in time, and we have a record then that can be utilised by other community groups and individuals, as I said, if their court cases go through the process that ours did. ICAG, as a community group, we have been a support network to property owners that are directly being impacted by mining companies that are already operational and approved, or those ones that are seeking approval. And we also put a human face to the environment that's being destroyed by those very government approvals. Our wildlife is dying in numbers going completely undocumented. And this proposed quarry here in the Limeburners Creek, Alworth area, they have already started clearing bushland. They've already started building roads through the creek lines of Deep Creek, and they haven't been approved to do so.
So it's yet another community that's feeling under siege from people that are essentially wrecking the purpose for that they decided to shift to those areas. Or
absolutely, yes.
Generations.
Absolutely. And this is where once an area is destroyed, we have enough examples around New South Wales alone, let alone around Australia, and it's happening around the world. The natural environment is being destroyed at a rapid rate by ruthless government approvals. And you see it happening, just to bring it back into our area, between Hunter Quarries in the Karuah Shire, which actually is in our valley and impacts properties in our valley, including our house, our property. We get their dust. We don't hear any of their noise, thank God. And we get all their blasting dust, particularly when they blast on windy days, which they do. And I have been privy to hanging out the washing one moment, trying not to look at the pit that we look at on the eastern side of our property, turned around just as I'm picking washing up to see the cliff explode into a pile and then clouds of dust, hundreds of metres high. And on the northeast swirl breeze, the dust was carried all the way up north, up the valley, and would have kept going to Gloucester and the Barrington Tops and beyond. And there was another section of cloud from the blasting part of the dust. It actually went up Forest Glen Road, hit the house in Fords Road, and then kept going into the Clarencetown Dungog Shire. Now, we're approximately from that quarry pit, we see 2 cliffs and part of the pit. We're approximately care of the planning department in 2019 They took measurements that to the end of our street and the Buckets Way corner was about 9.9 kilometres, and we're 1.5 kilometres from the Buckets Way to our property gate. So 11 point something kilometres from this quarry. Parallel to it, we've been suffering dust impacts since they've been given approval to keep moving north, parallel to the Buckets Way. And in that time, the dust inside our house is horrific. The dust inside our tanks, we have to have 2 filters per year, and that's not enough. You can taste the grit in the water. We used to have really clean water and clean air. We don't. It's been altered, it's been damaged, it's been destroyed, and we're suffering the impacts by government approvals. So if this proposed would-be quarry goes in that valley of Deep Creek, it will be approximately from our gate 1.3 kilometres, and their documentation is not adequate at all. No surprise there, but shocking at the same time. Their wind directions and everything where dust is concerned is just off. It's just the documentation is missing. And as a property that is impacted by Hunter Quarries already, I'm scared what's going to happen if this quarry is approved, that houses are even going to be closer than ours at 1,300 metres.
Yeah. So it's death by 1,000 cuts.
Absolutely, yes. Or blasts, death by 1,000 blasts. And my nose bled in 2019 when I forgot. I'd closed all the windows and the doors up in the house, which is what we have to do. And we've had to do that for the last 4 years as Hunter Quarries is getting bigger and more of the bushland mountains are being destroyed. And in that time, we had a really nice night, beautiful breeze coming through, bit of a warm night, and I left this window open a couple of feet. I woke up the next morning. This has been documented down with the EPA, with the planning department through submissions that I've written about the impacts that I've suffered personally, and nothing happens. And we've even asked for a dust monitor, nothing happens. I woke up the next morning and I just put my hand up to my face waking up, and it was like pink dust all over my hand. And crunchy. It was like finest talc powder, but it had crunchy angulated bits in it. And unbeknownst to me at that point, I'm still in bed. The dust was all over the bed head, all over my little 3-drawer next to the window, all over the dressing table. And it wasn't until I got up and was doing that across the dressing table to get the dust back on my hand that I realised I had had a nosebleed through the night. I had blood on me, on the sheet, and on the pillow slip. And when I got talking to people I've known since 2006 that are impacted by Hunter Quarries South Pit, the one that runs parallel to the branch lane that we're looking at, they said to me, Amanda, we told you that you have to keep your windows and doors closed at night time. And I said, yes, I know, but we'd left it open just a little bit. And their comment was, we've told you, and that's a classic example for you again, that at nighttime, the dust in the air gets heavy and it gets pushed down to the ground. And if there's windows open, the dust gets pushed through the screens.
Yeah, and this is the New South Wales government departments that are allowing this to happen.
Absolutely, the government's allowing it to happen under their approval, and they don't give one thought for the impacts their approvals are doing, nor do they care. It's not as if they don't know. There's enough documented evidence of impacts around New South Wales alone of government-approved coal mines, gravel quarries, etc., and they don't care. It's that constant need to approve something, and we are all, as local land services, approval with bushland clearing next door to us, we and wildlife are collateral damage. The DPIE in Newcastle, their employee who was talking to me, said to me, what was that last thing that you just said to me, Amanda, about? And I was like, about oh, you mean, are we collateral damage? Yes, he said. And I went, ah. I said, well, I've always thought that. And so it doesn't matter to the government how many people get sick. It doesn't matter to the government how many people's noses bleed up the Gloucester Stroud Valley from the coal mines. And there are people I know whose noses bleed every day. I also know that people whose noses bleed every day from Hunter Quarries. And it's that rock that gets in people's noses that scratches around and obviously is causing these nosebleeds that actually is going undocumented by government acknowledgement.
Yeah.
We're the ones that are documenting it down through our submissions and through public meetings and through media, but it's the government that will not acknowledge that their approvals not only are destroying the environment, killing wildlife, they are making people sick. And that's the pot that we're all boiling in under government approval.
Now, how can we, is that you mentioned before submissions going against the quarry extension? How can we, are you able to send us some information that we can give to local people? Because this will end up with you, this interview. Are there any information that you can give or any guidance that you can give that we can include with the interview?
Yes, I can definitely send you something, but things that people can write against, even if you don't live in the area.
Just hang on. Can I just ask a question, because it'll make it easier to put it together? So, Amanda, it does sound terrible and scary, as you said. What can people do if they want to help you?
If they want to help, as in help write, I'm only interested in people that will write an objection letter. I'm not interested in people that want to write a supporter letter. So only objectors. They can actually call me directly on 0403 645521, or they can email me on, all in lowercase, icag.inc@gmail.com. And I can send them information that they can then write their objections against. I mean, there are things written in this scoping report. They've failed their SES requirements. I couldn't even get the DPIE employee to acknowledge that the social impact consultation process had actually been flawed from the very beginning. And conveniently, under COVID, they haven't held any public meetings at all, which they could have been doing from years ago, because I, as a property owner that will be impacted, Secretary of ICAG, was asking them to come and meet us on our footpath with their maps so that they could point to me where their crusher was going to be, where their open cut pit was, as I look through the bush at the mountain that they want to destroy and the area. And they have failed to do that. They've failed to come out and meet people that are asking them. They gave us, excuse me, just recently, one date. Well, that was a day that I work off the property and I wasn't able to be there. We asked them to come on the weekend and they've refused, yet they're happy to operate 6 days a week from 6 a.m. in the morning through to 6 p.m. at night. Are they for real? We don't have any of that type of industrial noise in the entire area. And thank God we can't hear the crusher from Hunter Quarries, because it sounds like a fighter jet plane hovering just off the ground, and it's relentless. And the people over there impacted by Hunter Quarries in the Karuah area, they have their windows and doors closed and TV on loud, and you can still hear it. It vibrates their houses. So we're going to be 1.3, 1,300 meters away from their open cut pit. I already know in my soul what ramifications we're going to suffer via the very people that I've met in my life living here in this valley for 17 years, both in Karuah from Hunter Quarries and the coal mines, Duralie and Stratford Coal, just up north of Stroud, and Stroud properties were impacted as well. And so you know what's coming if this is approved. Truck movements, people can write about the impacts of, we've got a tourist drive to of New South Wales. We have tourist people coming up here with caravans and camper vans and every sort in between, and motorhomes and vehicles with trailers. And they're going to be, if this is approved, they're going to be dodging all these trucks on a very narrow road. Now, it's irrelevant that the council is now busy extending areas of the Buckets Way that are areas and bridges that don't even handle sort of local traffic, let alone holiday traffic or mining traffic. And some of these areas that they're extending, coincidentally and interestingly enough, are actually in the area where they want to put this proposed quarry and where the proposed haul road is going to go in and out of the Buckets Way. So time will tell as to, you know, how that progresses. And obviously we're wanting the government departments of everyone, state and federal, because this is both state and federal government issues, because we've got Deep Creek is a zoned protected creek of the Karuah River that flows into then the Marine Park, Port Stephens. If they approve this to happen in any shape or form, it's like watching, as I mentioned to you, Anthony, it's like watching a historical building being deregistered by a coal mine and government. And if they're able to be given approval to put the proposed quarry here, they will deregister, they will devalue that major creek system that flows out to the Karuah River, is a zoned protected creek of the Karuah River Marine Park. It has oyster leases in this creek system of the Karuah River entrance. And the oyster industry a number of years ago brought in $12 million per annum. Now, that's just one industry. You've got the tourist industry and downstream users of Port Stephens. You've got this major creek system that floods and blocks off the Buckets Way. And yet in their documentation, they've made it seem like it's a insignificant creek that, you know, and no creek is insignificant, regardless of what the government has labeled it, first, second, third, fourth order streams, you know, or they call them drainage lines, which is really dreadful too, because it's like they're devaluing and deregistering. It's a creek. It's a creek system that flows to the river. And this creek river system flows to the Karuah River, Port Stephens, the Marine Park. And if they approve it, what it will do also is, I believe, set a precedent for the Great Lakes Marine Park and Port Stephens Council Marine Park and elsewhere. It actually then opens up a can of worms, I believe, that then if they can do it to this creek by deregistering and devaluing it and approving a quarry to go around multiples of sides of it and stick a pipe in another arm of the creek as their supposed water supply. So already then they've impacted two of the major arms of the three arms of Deep Creek. It's the headwaters of this creek system. So if they're approved, they will then, I believe, turn back the other creek systems that we drive under road bridges along the Buckets Way, and no creek is safe then. No protected zoned creek is going to be safe from then government approval turn back.
Yeah, it's all part of the collateral damage. Catchments don't exist.
Yes.
Individual applications for a project, a quarry or whatever, it's just the impacts on that piece of land, not on how it flows to the others. Amanda, we finish it up there. We'll give you as much support as we can. We'll certainly publicise this in the future, maybe get back to you later on. But it's, yeah, what you're experiencing is what communities all over the country, all over the world, as you mentioned before, are experiencing as our natural environment is just considered part of, it's collateral damage. and it's something that's stopping us from development, which has put us in the crazy situation that we're currently in. So all the best with it. And it is really, to me, it's really impressive, inspirational that you guys have been fighting these fights for over 15 years now. And there's no sign of that. Your energy going away, the energy that you're putting into it, that your group is putting into it, diminishing. So thank you and congratulations for doing all that.
Thank you so much. I guess my motto has always been to any community groups or individuals that work with us and us with them, that they're going to take it anyway. That's the sick, sad reality. And so if the best we can do is put objections in, then lodge an objection, even if it's just a few sentences or a paragraph of why you object to the government handing over another bushland area to be destroyed for putting through furnaces to produce electricity is just beyond ridiculous. You know, coal mines are bad enough, but to actually then be starting to use bushland to produce electricity for that split second is just beyond sensical. And it just shows the lack of concern and the lack of control that our government actually has when they should be looking after Australia, and they should be looking after the natural resources first, not handing them over to companies to plunder and destroy forever. So thank you very much for having me on your program. And as I said, if the best that we can do is lodge an objection in any shape or form, then at least that's something. And for those community groups that get the opportunity to go to court on behalf of the environment, that just lodges further objections in, you know, different areas of the law in Australia, and gives people then the ability to join and then use that information. So thank you once again. I'll pass you the information across via the email, and try and do that dot point form, Anthony, like you said, for people to write against. I'll send that to you in another email.
Exactly, Amanda. And one thing everyone can do just as well is we can vote out this pro-coal coalition government, and the opposition just as well, which is also pro-coal.
Yes.
You know, we have elections coming, and we can support independent candidates, and we can support parties that are committed to clean and green energy that doesn't cause this sort of harm to the environment and to people. Certainly, I mean, we hear about people complaining about that wind turbines make noise, but it doesn't come to the level of what you have described, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anyone that lives near the turbines. I've seen that on a current affair. I think it was one of those programs. And I thought, yeah, the one in Newcastle that used to be there at the coal loading, it was noisy and you were standing on the ground. So I guess if it took over our mountain range and you had that noise, that constant zzz, that would be infuriating, and also from a visual aspect. So I guess that, you know,
with
that
one
noise...
With one difference, that you don't burn something that goes into the atmosphere, which is actually making for our children an unlivable future for them. You know, the wind turbines, as they move on, they deliver cheaper and cleaner energy for, you know, for many years to come.
I think, you know, your point of wind turbines, if they actually put them in areas where mining companies had already destroyed, and, you know, weren't in close proximity to any remaining houses that people were trying to hang on to, you know, that would be a way of using all the wasteland areas. You know, I think of our valley, and I think, you know, they could have a row of turbines running the furthest extremities from houses, or not having them near those particular houses. But I mean, most of the houses in a lot of areas are gone. You know, those properties are gone. They're open cut pits for either gravel or coal mines. But obviously the coal mines just in our valley and elsewhere seem to just take over such a vast area and very quickly. And yet Hunter Quarries, they've got a number of different pits, and they're just moving north, south, east and west, all pits independently. And so this bushland on the north side of the Pacific Highway is just going. So yeah, climate change is being altered drastically through government approvals, turning what was bush and trees and rainforests into clear-felled, bald, open-cut areas. And so that, you know, the rainfall events alter, and bringing the clouds into an area alters. And you know, just in 2019, we had a storm come from Stroud, and it's still there on the concrete. Every dot of the rain dots was black, and as it was hitting the concrete, it was making a fuzzy sort of noise. And I stopped putting equipment in the shed thinking, what is that noise? What's that noise? And then I looked down, and as the rain was hitting the concrete, it was fizzing. And those imprints on the concrete and the black are still there on our concrete path. I haven't washed them off. And, you know, so if that isn't like an acid rain type event, I don't know what is. Not enough that you can see vegetation and go, oh, the vegetation is dead. But on that particular instance, yeah, every raindrop has this black circle on the concrete. And it was a newer concrete path. So it was clean and nice concrete. And now it's all pitted with these black dots. So yes, anything the government is doing has a lifelong, everlasting impact. And that's just the sad reality that, you know, yes, we have to move along with renewables, but keep in mind that that impacts, you know, that house, if there's a house or a farm, put it away from those people so that they don't have to suffer, you know, due to, you know, modern technology moving on, you know, if at all possible. So yes, unfortunately here, 10 jobs, I mean, for the accommodation businesses, of the 3 accommodation businesses in this area, including ours, though we don't draw a profit, and we've been working towards doing that, we would hire more than 10 people that this proposed quarry is going to hire between the 3 of us, let alone individually. And, you know, so that for one property owner or one DA, they can destroy everything for everyone else around them. It just seems like Australia's being turned on its head. You know, for the minority, the majority have to suffer.